Maybe you clicked out of curiosity, or maybe, without even knowing, you were looking for a quiet corner, a space where words arrive slowly, and silence is welcome too. I wrote this story with care, like stitching together memories, hurts, and small discoveries, hoping that somewhere in it, you might recognize a piece of yourself. And if that happens, even for just a moment, stay. Listen as far as you'd like. If you feel like leaving a trace, even something small, a simple "I'm here" in the comments, a quiet share, or just tapping that little heart. It all matters more than you think. And if you want to come back for the next story, you already know where to find me. I don't remember light. I don't remember colors, faces, or words. What I remember, if you can even call it remembering, is sound. The steady thump of my mother's heartbeat, the shallow rhythm of her breath, the way it sped up when she was nervous, and how it slowed only when she tried to calm herself down at night. That was my world. Then, one evening, the world changed. Her heartbeat spiked so suddenly it startled me. I felt her body stiffen around me, muscles tightening, chest rising and falling too fast. And then I heard it, another voice, louder, harsher, a man's. His words were muffled through layers of flesh and bone, but the tone was unmistakable, angry, demanding. There was a sound of paper snapping, sharp, rough. Something slammed against her, hard enough that I felt the jolt ripple through her ribs. Her breath caught. My tiny universe shook. Then came the sound of footsteps, heavy, deliberate, like boots pounding against wood. Each step sent a tremor through her body and through me. I didn't understand the language. I didn't know what debt was or what signatures meant, but I understood fear. I could taste it in the way her pulse jumped, in the way her chest seemed to hold air too long before letting it go. That night was the first time I realized something. The world outside wasn't soft or safe. I hadn't even been born yet, but I already knew. Out there, things could hurt you. The world outside me hadn't grown calmer since that night of shouting. If anything, my mother's body carried tension all the time now, her breath shorter, her heart racing in bursts. I didn't know why, but I knew she was being cornered. That evening, everything shifted again. Her hand must have been on something hard and smooth, because I felt her body leaning sideways, bracing herself. Her heartbeat thudded against me, frantic. And then came his voice again, louder this time, closer, right above us. To me, he was a storm. Heavy footsteps, a chest rumbling with anger. He was like a mountain moving, pressing in. She was the only barrier between us and him, and I could feel her trembling like a leaf in a high wind. There was another sound, sharper, cutting through the air. A laugh. Not his. Higher, mocking, a woman's. The tone didn't carry warmth, only cruelty. Like a knife dragged slowly across glass. My mother's own mother. Even I could sense the cold edge in it. Papers rustled, shoved against her with force. I felt the sting as they hit her chest. The way her body flinched as though the paper weighed as much as stone. She resisted. I don't know how I knew it, but she did. Her head shook. Her voice was soft, but firm. And then, impact. His arm slammed into her. Her balance broke. Suddenly gravity pulled us both, and my entire world flipped. My tiny universe spun. Her arms reached for something, anything, but momentum tore us down step by step. Each jolt shook me like a bell, my insides rolling with hers. When the fall ended, her breath exploded out of her chest, sharp and painful. I stayed still, waiting, terrified. Then, there it was, a single beat, then another. Her heart was still pounding. My own spark still flickered inside her. We hadn't been broken. Not yet. But in that moment, twisting in the dark, I learned something new. Even before birth, you can feel what cruelty is. When the world finally stopped spinning, it was no longer wood beneath us, no longer carpet scratching against her arms. Now it was a different place entirely. I knew because of the sounds. Steady beeps, a low hum, rhythms that didn't belong to her heartbeat. Machines, wires, voices speaking in calm, measured tones. Doctors and nurses. The words didn't make sense to me, but the tone was careful, clinical, nothing like the storm that had knocked us down the stairs. Her body lay still, exhausted. For a while I feared the silence, that maybe her heart had given up. But then it came again, slow but steady. Relief washed over me like a tide. Then she did something she hadn't done before. Her hand pressed against the place where I lived. Not out of fear this time, not bracing against someone else's rage. This touch was searching, desperate, as though she needed proof I was still there. I answered the only way I could. A weak kick, small but certain. Her breath hitched. And then I felt it. Tears. Hot drops falling down her skin, her chest trembling as she cried. She wasn't crying from pain. She was crying because she'd found me still alive. For a moment, it felt like the first time we weren't completely alone. But the door opened, and the atmosphere shifted. The other woman's voice cut through. The one I'd heard laugh like a knife before. Her tone here wasn't sharp with rage, but cold, dismissive. She tossed words like stones. You tripped. That's the story. Keep it that way. Don't make a scene. There was no comfort in her presence, no hand reaching for her daughters, just the weight of expectation, the demand to hide everything, to pretend nothing had happened. I felt my mother's chest tighten again, her breath caught between anger and surrender. She said nothing. Silence was the only shield she had left. And in that silence, I understood something new. You can be surrounded by people and still be utterly alone. The hospital should have been a place of safety. Machines kept their rhythm. Nurses passed through with polite voices. But when he arrived, the air thickened again. I knew it was him before he even spoke. His footsteps were heavier than the others, measured, sharp, like he owned the floor. My mother's pulse quickened, and I felt her chest tighten as if she was holding her breath. Then his voice came, low, pressing. Each word hit like a hammer through her body. He dropped something onto her lap, papers again. The same demand, the same threat. Her heart raced so fast, it felt like a drumline. I curled tighter inside, waiting for it to slow, but it didn't. And then I heard a word I'd never heard before. Harsh, bitter. He spit it out like poison. Trash doesn't get choices. I didn't know what trash meant, but I knew how it landed. I felt the way her body jerked slightly, as though the word itself had weight. I felt the ache in her chest, the sharp edge of humiliation. It cut her deeper than the fall down the stairs. For a long time, silence filled the room. He expected tears, I think. He expected her to break. But she didn't. She didn't cry this time. Her breath steadied, slow and deliberate, even as her heart still thundered. She lifted her head instead of lowering it. I couldn't see it, but I felt it, in the way her spine straightened, in the way her body no longer curled inward. She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. She just looked back at him, wordless. And for the first time, I realized silence could be stronger than shouting. Inside her, I stayed still, waiting. But I could tell something had shifted. She was no longer only protecting me. She was beginning to protect herself. When we finally left the hospital, I thought maybe things would slow down. But home wasn't quieter. It was worse. Nights stretched long. My world shook with every slammed door, every curse that echoed through the walls. I heard envelopes slapped down on the table, their paper edges crackling, followed by his voice rising in fury. Bills, deadlines, demands. Her heart would speed up whenever the shouting began. Sometimes she froze, holding still, as though silence could make her invisible. Other times she moved quickly, slipping into her room, closing the door behind her. That's when I began to hear something new. The scratch of a pen. Slow at first, then faster, as though her hand couldn't keep up with her mind. I could feel the tension in her arm, the way her chest leaned forward, steadying herself as she wrote. To me, each stroke sounded sharp, like carving lines into stone. Every word she put on paper felt like a mark against the walls that held us. A record, a weapon. And she wasn't just writing. Some nights, her footsteps carried us outside, softer than usual, as if she didn't want anyone to notice. Her breath tightened whenever the cold air hit. Then I'd hear her voice, barely above a whisper. She spoke into a receiver, words low and hurried. One name repeated, Karen. Her pulse shifted when she said it, not the fear panic I'd come to know, but something steadier, almost hopeful. Whoever Karen was, she represented a thread my mother was trying to hold on to. I didn't understand the words she traded in those quiet calls, but I felt their weight, the secrecy, the risk, the fragile determination. It was the first time I realized she wasn't only surviving, she was planning. And every night, while the world outside boiled with anger and debt, I listened to her pen cutting across the page, carving out a way forward. Time at home didn't soften anything. The shouting, the slammed doors, the weight of bills piling higher, it all stayed the same. What changed was her. I could feel it. Before, her body curled in on itself when they mocked her. Her pulse jumped, her breath shallow, as though every insult left her smaller. But now she moved differently. When his voice tore through the walls, calling her weak, her heartbeat still raced, but there was something new beneath it. A steadiness, like a drumbeat, holding the rhythm no matter how loud the noise got. When her mother scoffed, "She can't even take care of herself. How will she raise a child?" I felt her chest shake, but not with sobs, with something closer to a laugh. A bitter smile she kept to herself. They thought carrying me made her fragile. They called me a burden, proof she'd never stand on her own. But inside, I knew the opposite. I could feel her resolve hardening with every cruel word. Each insult didn't break her. It added fuel. Every time they told her she'd fail, her heart beat stronger against me, like she was daring the world to test her. They believed she was crumbling. They believed they'd already won. But I knew better. In the dark, pressed close to her heartbeat, I could sense it. A fire they couldn't see. A strength they didn't recognize. They thought she was falling apart. The truth was simpler. She was preparing. It started with a sound I'd never heard before. Engines, more than one. Heavy tires crunching against gravel, rolling fast into the driveway. Headlights flared through the thin walls, their beams vibrating in my tiny world. My mother froze. Her heart skipped, then thundered so loud I felt every beat like a drum inside my bones. She didn't move, but I could sense her listening, waiting. Then came the pounding, fists against the front door. Voices, men, angry, sharp. Their words were jagged, demanding. I didn't know the language of debt or deadlines, but I understood the fury. Where's the money? No more excuses. Inside, his footsteps stormed toward the door. My father's voice rose, trying to sound powerful, but it cracked at the edges. He made a promise. She'll sign. My daughter will sign. And in that instant, I understood something terrifying. To him, I wasn't a life. I wasn't hope. I wasn't even family. I was leverage. The unborn child that made her weak. The paper he thought he could force her to validate. The last card he had left to play. I felt her pulse at those words, ragged, furious. Her hand pressed against me, tight, protective. I pushed back with a small kick, as if to say I understood. But deep inside, something else stirred. Not just fear. Something hotter, sharper. It was the first time I felt it, though I didn't yet know the name. A kind of anger, born from the knowledge that we were being used. That night, as the voices outside rose and the house trembled, I realized we weren't just victims anymore. We were waiting. The house had never been so loud. Boots scraped against the floor, chairs shoved aside, voices demanding answers. He tried to stall, to bluff, but even I could sense it. He was cornered. Then everything shifted. Her footsteps moved, slow, steady, carrying both of us out of the bedroom. I felt her hand pressed protectively against me as she walked, her spine straighter than I'd ever known. The room went silent for a moment when she appeared. A woman swollen with pregnancy, bruised but standing tall. To me, it felt like the world held its breath. And then, she did something unexpected. Her hand placed something on the table, a small notebook, worn from nights of writing, pages filled with dates, names, numbers. The truth. I couldn't see it, but I felt the shift in the room, the sudden weight of her action. He exploded instantly, his body lunging forward, desperate to snatch it away. But rough hands shoved him back. The men who had come for money weren't interested in his performance anymore. They turned toward her, toward the notebook. Her voice came next, and it wasn't the shaky whisper I'd always known. It was firm, sharp, each word carrying like a hammer strike. I will not sign, not today, not tomorrow, not ever. For the first time, her words cut through louder than his threats, louder than the debts screaming from the envelopes. And in that moment, I kicked, hard, stronger than before. Not out of fear, but because I understood. She wasn't just refusing for herself. She was refusing for me. And together, in that room full of rage and reckoning, I knew we had taken the first step toward breaking free. The men flipped through the notebook, their laughter sharp, cutting. But it wasn't laughter at her. It was at him. They read his lies out loud, line by line, names of creditors, fake promises, numbers that didn't add up. With every page, the mask he wore cracked further. You thought you could bluff us with your daughter's name? Pathetic. All this time, hiding behind her while you drowned in your own mess. For once, he didn't roar back. His voice broke. His chest heaved. He begged, not with anger, but with desperation. The man who had once kicked us down the stairs was shrinking now, pressed into the wall, shaking like prey with nowhere left to run. And she, my mother, stood taller than I'd ever felt her stand. Her heartbeat was steady, her breathing calm, even as chaos swirled around us. She didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She didn't look away. The storm wasn't ours anymore. It was his. When the shouting reached its peak, she turned. Her footsteps moved with certainty, carrying us past the men, past the piles of paper, past the house that had been nothing but a cage. The door opened, and for the first time in my existence, I felt air move differently, cool, fresh, not recycled through fear or filtered by closed windows. The night breeze brushed against her skin, and through her, I felt it too. The sound of chaos dimmed behind us. Ahead was only silence and freedom. That night, I realized the prison wasn't the walls, it was them. And by walking out, she had finally torn it down. The house we left behind never returned. I knew it through the way my mother's body finally began to rest at night. Her heart beat slower, calmer. No more boots pacing the hallway. No more laughter like knives cutting through the air. Karen helped us. I could tell by the way my mother's voice softened whenever she spoke that name, by the steadier rhythm of her breath when she made plans in hushed tones. There was a new roof above us now. Walls that didn't echo with threats, and outside, word spread. The same neighbors who once pretended not to see now whispered openly. His reputation, once so carefully polished, was shredded. Their debts piled high, and with no one left to cover for them, they drowned in their own mess. But we were gone. We were free. I hadn't even been born yet, but I had witnessed something rare. Not just survival, a rebirth. My mother, once bent and broken under their cruelty, stood taller with each passing day. She wasn't the same woman who had clutched the banister in fear. She was someone new. Late at night, when it was quiet, her hand would rest on me. Her voice, soft, steady, almost smiling, would whisper, "You won't grow up in fear, not like I did. I promise." Her heartbeat answered the vow, strong and certain. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of the dark anymore. Because I knew, beyond this darkness, beyond these last months of waiting, light was waiting for us.